6:15, and I said we'd start at 6:15, so we need to get started. And we get started with pieces of business first. And what I didn't ask beforehand is who would help us with the invocation, so I really need a volunteer. So somebody raise their hand very quickly. Beva, thank you very much. So believe it or not, Northwest Grassroots, Moving Out with the Northwest Grassroots, has been going on for 54 months. We've done 66 events, and I don't know why we haven't worn out yet, but we have. So what I'd like to do is give Beva a microphone and ask her to please start with our invocation for a great meeting and blessings to all.
Our Heavenly Father, as we come before you, I just pray that we would all have thankful hearts, that the words of our mouth, the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, that you would lead Cecily through the meeting. Keep us all open to your goodness and your mercy. Thank you for the country that we live in, that we can have these discussions, that we can have our disagreements, but like brothers and sisters, stick together when you call upon us. In Jesus' holy and precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Matthew will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance as soon as I get a flag here.
If you would all please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Turn this off so we still have power when we start using them. Okay. So we sort of affiliated with the Tea Party Patriots a while back at the beginning of the year. And so what we do at the meetings now is sort of bring you up to date a little bit with some of the information that we get from the Tea Party Patriots. And one thing that's coming up shortly here is net neutrality. And it is about regulating the internet. The FCC is in a public comment period. And so if you search on net neutrality or stop internet regulation, you're going to learn about it. There are petitions to sign. We really need to let the FCC know to leave the internet alone. We don't need the regulation. We don't need it changing. And it's just really, the idea is that we want to treat all data on the internet equally. Don't impose web standards or the closed internet. Don't discriminate or charge differently by user, the content, the site platform, application, attached equipment, those kinds of things. So what you're wanting to do is keep the internet free as it is now, rather than be regulated. So truly do check out net neutrality, read about it, and look for, if you agree with it, look for petitions and sign the same. Every week we have what we call a legislative update, and it sort of lets us know things that are going on in Washington, D.C. So we had the Senate Resolution 19 heard in the judiciary, and it was about political donations. And truly what it is, as far as the Tea Party is concerned, is an assault on First Amendment rights. So I'll just read to you, this is the kind of information we get. On Tuesday, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing on SJ Resolution 19, a proposed constitutional amendment that would gut the Bill of Rights by allowing Congress to set limits on the amount of money candidates and campaign committees and even outside groups can raise and spend on elections. The amendment would specifically authorize the states to set the same limits for state elections. Now this has really no chance of going anywhere, but it's sort of some of the kabuki theater that goes on in Washington, D.C. As you know, Harry Reid has been railing against the Koch brothers and all the massive amounts of money raised and those kinds of things. Doesn't talk about the unions and other stuff, but so it's part of that thing, and it's just something for you to be aware of. Now on immigration, we're having a nasty little problem in the border states, as you've probably heard, in Texas and Arizona especially. And first of all, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals was something that Obama put in place a couple years ago. And what that was for, until we, quote, passed some comprehensive immigration reform, was to allow adult children, unaccompanied adult children, to work and live in the United States without threat of deportation. So that has just been renewed for an additional 2 years. So that's going on to 2016. But right now we have the unaccompanied minors that are, quote, creating an urgent humanitarian situation. So I'll read you that one. A week ago Friday, the White House informed Congress via a letter from the OMB to the leadership of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee that it expected the projected cost of caring and resettling children immigrants from Central America to reach as high as $2.28 billion next year, well more than double the $858 million the administration asked for in fiscal year 2015 budget it presented just a few months ago. These child immigrants, unaccompanied adult children, or UACs in Washington speak, could total 66,000 this year, according to the administration. But House Appropriations Committee Hal Rogers of Kentucky says they could actually end up being almost twice that much, 127,000, according to the estimates he's seen. So nasty problem, and you've probably heard Jan Brewer talking about what are we supposed to be doing with these people. They're busing them from Texas. They're dropping them off in bus stations in Tucson and Phoenix. And now what do you do with them? So the state's basically burdened with how do you house them, how do you clothe them, how do you feed them, that kind of thing. And then you have the other problem is why are we having this huge influx right now? And I guess you also have to ask, is Arizona being punished for the stance they took as far as immigration and things that way? So it's a nasty situation that's going on. So this is an interesting thing that came up. This is the Medical Group Management Association, and they surveyed over 40,000 physicians regarding the first 120 days of working with Obamacare exchange patients. And so those are some of the results. 62% of the physicians indicated they had difficulty identifying the patient's coverage, 60% difficulty determining eligibility, 50% were unable to provide services because they were out of the network, and 20% were excluded from a very narrow network. Some of the comments from the survey: we're going to have to hire additional staff just to manage the insurance verification process. Identification of ACA plans has been an administrative nightmare. Patients have been very confused about benefits and their portion of the cost. Once patients find out their deductible, they've canceled appointments and procedures. Many patients purchase products with a very narrow network and didn't understand the ramifications. They're very upset once they learn that they can't go to the specialist or the hospital of their choice. As primary care providers, we're now faced with the extra burden of trying to find them care with their new narrow network. Payer directories are woefully inaccurate and impossible to rely on. So that sort of gives you an idea of the first 120 days that physicians are facing with Obamacare. Next thing we do is we talk about upcoming events that we know of. On Thursday, day after tomorrow, these candidates get to talk to everybody again at the candidate filing fling, and that's at the Red Lion River Inn at 11:30. It's best to look it up. They like reservations, and there is a charge for the lunch. And we The Northside Conservative Alliance does meet on this same date, June 17th, but I didn't put it up there because I can. We're having Sharam Hadian back in the area on next Tuesday, June 17th, and he's talking about restoring our constitutional republic. How many of you attended the last event when he was here talking about Chisholm? How many of you plan to attend this coming event? And how many of you plan to bring guests? Excellent speaker, incredible presentations. If you want to learn something, this is definitely a place to go. And we'll be sending, yeah, I'll hit the emails as soon as this meeting's over. I didn't want to confuse people, so you know how it goes. So this is the period in our meeting where we have an open microphone. Announcements concerning issues, what's happening, that type of thing. One thing before we get started on that, I do want to talk about Initiative 1325. And actually, I'd really like Mike Fagan to come up and talk about it if he's still here. Michael? Sorry about that. Are you just starting to eat? This is very important. I don't know where the initiative stands right now as far as signatures gathered, but we need to have these turned in by July 3rd. So I've got blank initiatives here. Love you guys to take them. Applies to anybody who's a resident of the state of Washington. Go ahead. He's on yellow.
Thank you. I don't even know what to say.
Sorry.
Haven't even had a chance to kind of, unwind or anything to that effect. But yes.
You've never had a problem.
Yeah, I know. Cecily is absolutely correct, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the final throes of the signature gathering effort for Initiative 1325. Now, can I give you guys a signature quantity that we have? No, unfortunately I can't. You know why? It's because we're gathering signatures on both ends of the state. So, when we get to about the third week of this month, then the three of us will end up getting together for an initial count, and we are already pushing Republican organizations, other liberty groups, freedom-minded folks to get these petitions filled out and get them sent in to our P.O. Box here in Spokane, Washington. Just a couple of days ago, we went ahead and commissioned our mailing house to go ahead and get some more petitions out on the street. So, I mean, we are going and going and going. Matter of fact, I think that...
There's a full one.
What's it about?
Oh, okay, good, good.
What's it about?
Initiative 1325. Well, let me just back up and regroup. Over the last 20 years, we have had an opportunity to have 2/3 supermajority requirement on the legislature to raise taxes in the state of Washington. And through the last 20 years, that particular policy has saved taxpayers in this state a ton of money. It has helped to shape the politics here in Washington state. As a matter of fact, I'll even be so bold as to say it probably helped the Senate coalition come together.
How much money?
Michael's shaking his head yes.
Over the years, let's see, since 1999, the Office of Financial Management went ahead and put together some numbers for us, and the three horsemen of the apocalypse, the bad boys of Olympia, through our campaigns, have saved Washington state taxpayers a little over $26 billion. That's with a B. Okay, and we're not finished yet. Now again, we just had our mailing house go out to the full list, spent a ton of money getting this done. Unfortunately, folks, we don't have the backers that we used to have for this particular initiative drive. So we are relying solely on volunteer signature gatherers, our freedom-minded, go out there and grab the gusto kind of people. And I'm telling you, we do have some big-time heroes that have come through with thousands and thousands of signatures just by themselves because they believe in this particular policy. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what 1325 does. Since the Supreme Court overturned 1185, which was the last 2/3 supermajority initiative that we qualified and had approved by 2/3 of the voters in the state of Washington, the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court said, hey, if you guys want to do this and do this the correct way, why don't you put together a measure that will guarantee a constitutional amendment? So that's what 1325 is all about. And here's how it works. Basically, we are holding a bit of a hammer over the state legislature. We are saying, if you don't give the people an opportunity to vote on the 2/3 constitutional amendment, we're going to take 1% of your sales tax from you. That's going to equate to about $1 billion. Okay? Now, as you folks know, because of the McCleary decision, there's a couple of things going on behind the scenes that you guys need to be made aware of. First and foremost, McCleary decision says, hey, we need about $4 to $6 billion more for education in the state of Washington. So how are they going to get that money? Well, the OSPI, the superintendent of the Washington State schools here, they are talking about a 1% bump in the sales tax and couple that with a property tax levy lid lift in order to garner the money that they need to meet the requirements that are being imposed by a non-legislative body known as the judicial branch. So that's coming down the pike. If the legislature, like I said, does not give us that opportunity in the very next election cycle and put this thing on the ballot for the people to vote on, then obviously the 1% sales tax deduction goes into effect, and you guys will be able to take advantage of, I believe if I'm doing the math correctly, it's about, what, 12%? 12% tax decrease? Wow. As far as the sales tax is concerned?
Take that with you. It's filled.
Oh, yeah, it's filled out. So, you know, once again, folks, very, very important. If you got any sheets that are filled out, if you've already hit up all the people that you possibly can, get these things mailed off to our P.O. box. You know, right about, like I said, the 3rd week of June, Tim, Jack, and I will be getting together. We've got boxes and boxes of these things, and we'll go ahead and see what we can do about getting a preliminary count. I'll tell you, I'm feeling it in my bones, folks. This is a pretty popular measure, and I am extremely hopeful that we're going to be able to put this thing over the top.
This is really important. This would help us tremendously in budget negotiations if we're able to do it.
Now, coming from Senator Baumgartner, he just said this is very important because this will help the legislature in their budget negotiations coming up. Like I said, over the last 20 years, the 2/3 supermajority policy has really shaped the state legislature. It's shaped our budget process, and it's kept the Democrats from going haywire. I'm telling you. So thank you very much.
Great, and I do have blank initiatives here. We have some that require 20 SIGs and others that are just 7. So if anybody would like them, Michael, see that you get them. Here you go, Michael. So raise your hand and he will see that you go home with 2 or 3 or 4. Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, anybody else have any announcements concerning issues? You know, what's happening? Oh, you're back?
Yeah, I'm back. I know. You folks probably heard the bad news about one of my associates, council member Steve Salvatore. He is going to be resigning officially on Tuesday, July the 8th, at which point the city council in the city of Spokane is going to go ahead and make an announcement. We're going to open a public process, an application process. So if you know of anybody who resides in the northwest district of the city of Spokane, you may want to nudge them and ask them
I'm drinking water.
very, very kindly to give me a call so we can make sure that we can get an application in their hand. Now, the way the timeline is going to work here, folks, we will make that announcement probably Monday, the Monday following Steve actually leaving his seat. So that'd be the Monday after July 8th. And then we will have an application process for a couple of weeks. We'll put together a 3-member subcommittee from the Spokane City Council to review the applications, score the applications, and then bring them before the full council. We're probably looking at anywhere from 5 to 8 final candidates that we will have a very open and transparent appointment process procedure going forward. The appointment comes from the city council. You bet. God, you made me lose my train of thought, man. I had to just envision that one more time. Coming from the county commissioners, there you go. Anyway, all kidding aside, folks, the liberal-leaning side of this equation in the Spokane City Council has already been made aware publicly, because I've made it a point. Any chance that I get, when I'm next to one of my associates, I'm always letting people know that this thing could go really crazy with a supermajority, and those folks that serve on the left side of the aisle will be self-serving, or we could respect the wishes of the voters when they made the decision and cast their vote for Steve Salvatore, who, mind you, is a center right-leaning person. Okay? I'm not saying he's true conservative. He's moderate to right-leaning. And again, we're just hopeful that we are going to be able to choose somebody that will be, or will show some respect to the voters when they voted for Steve. So, any questions? Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew.
Also, there are two other vacancies, one in the city of Liberty Lake. Councilmember Lori Orlander is resigning due to work-related issues, and Baron Williamson in the city of Airway Heights is relocating to Atlanta. Both vacant. Well, Liberty Lake is effective immediately. Airway Heights will be effective July 1. If you know anyone in those areas, please contact them and have them get a hold of their city administrations to get involved in the process.
Thank you. Come on down, Aaron.
We don't know. Eric Cantor conceded to David Rapp an hour and a half ago. Party candidate. Yeah.
Correct. Eric Cantor was defeated by, an incumbent was defeated by a challenger in Virginia. Anybody else? And, you know, thinking about that, it could be his stand on amnesty, and possibly that might send a message to the GOP. We'll just have to see. Okay, any other announcements? Okay, cool. Save the power. All right, so I said that we'd talk about the PDCs a little teeny bit. And, you know, I'm the treasurer for Rob Chase, and have been treasurer for several other candidates. And there's a tremendous amount of information at the PDC that I feel we can, you know, really recognize. I mean, you might have candidates begging for money, and you look there and see that they have more than they, you know, enough for the next 2 elections. Or you can see that they don't have enough and they really need help, that kind of thing. But you can also see the businesses that basically support our candidates. And I think it's a great idea to let those people that are supporting the Republican candidates to know that's why you're frequenting their business, because they do support Republicans. Obviously, it could work the other way also, but hopefully you can look at things like this and really get a good feel for, you know, who's really stepping up and are being active in that political process. And I think it's a good thing to know. And as I said, there's a lot of information there. So when you go to the pdc.wa.gov, you're going to find a lot of information about the candidates, but you're also going to find out, you know, how they can advertise, where they can put signs, all kinds of different stuff. So it's a good site, and it's something that I think you all should be aware of. The other thing I said on our bulletin is that I was going to talk about, is there a civil war in the GOP? Because the media is pushing that concept. And, you know, a Tea Party candidate defeated Cantor and those kinds of things. So let's just talk about this whole thing. There's actually been a division in the GOP for the past 102 years. And that's when Teddy Roosevelt got pretty upset with Taft, and he started the Bull Moose Party. And it was a progressive party. It was quite interesting, some of the social issues that he wanted. And so anyway, as we know, what happened in that whole situation is that Taft, that they all lost, and Woodrow Wilson won with 42% of the vote. Lowest percent of the vote that any president's been elected on. Pretty interesting. So it, you know, as we all know, we don't have a bull moose party now, so that fizzled out. And so what we really have is sort of a common theme of constitutional conservatism versus big government Republicans. And there's really three factions. There's what many of us call the establishment Republicans, who really want to preserve the welfare state but make it more efficient, have government be more efficient. We have the social conservatives, and they're all for the Constitution, but they have an agenda restricting different factions. And so you think about that, you know, if you're looking at rights and liberties and things that way, well, you know, liberty's okay as long as it sort of falls in what I believe in, that kind of thing. And then you have the traditional limited government Republicans that want to halt the growth of the state, really hold it back and get some of these liberties restored. So it really works that way. And you know, where we've seemed to come to is that we have one priority, and that is to win elections at any cost. And I really believe, as I go through this presentation, that you're going to see that the politicians are starting to be judged by actions, not just words, not just who they say they are, but how they've been acting. So when we look at those last ones there, we had the Goldwater Rockefeller, and then the Pat Robertson versus H.W. Bush. Those were more current ones. And Ronald Reagan, very interestingly, had a quote, I believe the very heart and soul of conservatism is libertarianism. The basis of conservatism is a desire for less government interference and more individual freedom. That was 1975. And then, as we know, what happened in the Goldwater fiasco is that Goldwater lost, and we ended up with Jimmy Carter, but it did bring Ronald Reagan to the forefront. And obviously, he got elected in 1980. So right now, we have a problem going on with Ted Cruz, and the statements in the press is that they just feel that Cruz needs to be eliminated because he wasn't co-opted, and what they meant there was that he didn't really actively campaign for moderate Republican incumbents. He didn't campaign against them, but he didn't actively get in there and campaign for them. And the establishment feels that's wrong. So, you know, we all talk about principle over party and those kinds of things, but when people express those principles, they do get criticized for them. So, are the more conservative Republicans getting hammered right now? Absolutely. How is it going to turn out? I have absolutely no idea, but it's pretty interesting. So in 2009, as you all know, it was sort of the launch of the Tea Party. And the Tea Party really has three principles, core principles that they stand behind. Constitutionally limited government, and that really means the right of states to be able to govern themselves. You know, we don't need the federal government governing everything within a state. And let's get some of the state sovereignty back into the picture. Fiscal responsibility, which means a debt-free future. You know, the amount of deficit spending that we have going on right now probably is impossible to pay back. And what does it do to our future generations? It's not right. And then free market economics, meaning to stop government interference of private business. I think anybody who has a business recognizes that regulations just get to be more and more and more. I spent many, many years in the banking industry and was a compliance officer. And I got to tell you, there were new regulations and new pages to those books coming out every week. And it was a great way to fall asleep. I'd take them to bed with me and start reading, and whoo, it was, you're just going, wow, I can't even believe this. But it's the regulation as far as small businesses especially. I mean, you heard the doctors. They're going to have to hire more staff in order to comply, that kind of thing. So government was and is too darn big. It's just too big. Obama didn't cause this. It was really just coming to a head, and he put the icing on the cake. So this book was given to me by a friend, and I opened it up, and the first paragraph in this book reads, "Americans' liberty is perishing beneath the constant growth of government power. Federal, state, and local governments are confiscating citizens' property, trampling their rights, and decimating their opportunities more than ever before." I'm going, yeah, I mean, that's what we're all talking about. But this book looks old. I mean, it's one of those that you buy that the library stops doing, you know, and you can pick up at the library. It's called Lost Rights. It was first published 20 years ago in 1994. And you start looking at this, and it's just sort of gone downhill from. And so who's been in charge? Who can we say federally has really been in charge of the situation? And when you look at that chart there, you can see that the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate for 10 of the 16 years displayed, as compared to 6 of the Democrats. And so when we're told that you just need to vote Republican and everything's going to be okay, it's getting harder and harder and harder to convince voters that that's the truth. It's said that the two parties are on the same path to the left, but the Republicans just advance a little more slowly. And many are going to agree with that statement. You know, that's what the movie Agenda shows. Agenda, grinding America down. It is really, we're just marching to the left. So really, what is happening? Where are the voters? So when you look at this chart, you can see that people who identify themselves as independents have increased to 42%. People who identify themselves as Democrats are 31%, and Republicans are at 25%.
Where's that chart from?
It was a Gallup.
2013.
Yeah. 14. Okay. Yeah, 13. Voters are beginning to see that the party isn't the answer. And independents don't vote for party. They vote to individuals that are closest to their beliefs and ideas. And so I believe that the American citizens are starting to really declare their independence from the party system. And when you look at that Republican identification at 25%, that is the lowest identifier that it's been in 25 years. Democrats have virtually been unchanged the last 4 years, and as you saw, the independents were just going crazy. They're anti-party, they're fiscally responsible, they're socially liberal, meaning they believe in individual freedoms and keep the government out of there. Strong on national security. It doesn't mean they're strong on going to war. They're strong on national security, and they feel that both parties are controlled by special interest groups. So when you look at the graph here, the biggest concerns among independents, you're going to see that a slow economy is the first concern they have. And seeing as we have a small screen, this chart is probably a little difficult for you to read, but what it is that the current is in the black, is the black line. The blue is sort of the slowest. The yellow is averaged and the red is fastest. And you can see that Reagan had sort of a hard time there in 2000, 2001. Of course, we know the economy bounced up after that. But this recovery has been, I mean, how many times have we been told that this is the slowest recovery that we've really experienced since the Second World War? And so when you think that their slow growth concern is, it's really founded on what's going on. The second concern they have is the national debt. And we all know that the national debt is huge. And we also know that it's not all the Democrats' fault. And when you look at this chart, you can see that the national debt increase under Carter was 42%. Under Reagan's 8 years was 189%. H.W. 55, Clinton 36, and George 89%. So again, you aren't going to be able to convince independents that vote for me, I'm a Republican, it will change everything, is going to mean anything, because the history does not support that. In fact, H.W. Bush ridiculed Reagan's supply-side economics. He called them voodoo economics.
Give them their website. That's presidentialdebt.org.
Presidentialdebt.org is that website. And then when he got put on the ticket, he's just changed his tune totally. So you have a person saying one thing, and then you get on the ticket and you sort of change what you say. It's, you know, people have got to start paying attention. So proving, you know, to me what that proves is politicians say what they think you want to hear, not what they believe, not what they're going to be doing. And so, you know, I think it's a pretty darn hard job to persuade independents to vote Republican when you start looking at some of these numbers. So, you know, is there a civil war in the GOP? Yeah, there is. It's really between the people that want to return this country to a constitutional, conservative, smaller government type of government versus the ones that sort of are going along to get along and settling for the changes that can be made by getting, quote, elected. And so it's not only going on nationally, but it is going on at the state level and at the local level. And I just feel that we need to focus on honest messages, because if we don't, you'll probably end up with goodness knows what as your electeds. Independents are not going to be holding their nose and vote for a member of the permanent political class. They're just not going to do it. And that's probably what happened to Cantor. It's, I believe the time is up. So when I'm looking at local, and I know I'll probably upset a few people by saying what I'm going to say here, is that I get that every citizen has the right to run for elected office. I get that. What I don't get is why locally we aren't smart enough to figure out the game that's being played. To me, this is true out of the book Hegelian dialectic. It's creating or fueling differences with the hopes that a consensus is going to be reached after a lot of money is spent and a lot of money is made by some. And usually the group that keeps the conflict going is the group that's making the money. And you can just look to the conflict we have as far as global warming. Who's making the money over that? And it'll just keep on going until they figure out another conflict or another way to do it. So in my opinion, and as I told you, I'm Rob Chase's treasurer, Rob Chase should not have a Republican opponent. Mary Cooney could not be here tonight. She's in Seattle. But I'd ask her, what is it that Rob has done as Spokane County Treasurer that caused you to decide to run against him? What is it that he's done? And the same would go for Josh Arritola, who's endorsed by the GOP establishment. What is it about Matt Shea's voting record representing the 4th District? What about it is so egregious that you felt it imperative to challenge him?
What about Leonard Christian?
Why doesn't the GOP establishment support Clint Didier in the 4th Congregational District, who has a clear lead? This is about the we the people. And we've got to defeat the powerful political class. And like, you know, I'm hearing, not true, what about this and the whole thing, there's a perception. And so whether it's true or not, there's perceptions. And those are the things that we're really facing. We need to get back to being America's conservative party. And if that doesn't happen, I feel the result's going to be a third party. And up to now, we've seen the results of what third parties do.
Why do we have our district leaders running candidates against their best PCOs?
I have no idea.
Neither do I.
Throughout the country, Matt.
I have no idea. I mean, this is what I mean.
Two-time targeted right here.
I know
Two-time targeted right here.
Kootenai County got $80,000.
Two-time.
Okay, we're not going to go into it. It's silly. No, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even play with PCOs. So, is there a civil war? Absolutely. And I like this. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And fool me 3 times, we need term limits. I don't know if those are the answer or not, but all I do know is that we have a mess. And unless we can talk to one another, unless we can figure out what's going on, I happened to speak to the gentleman that's filed against you, and he was absolutely, he says, I'm not going to run against Matt Pederson. And I said, well, then you needed to have withdrawn. And he says, well, I'm not going to do anything to win the position. I didn't know, and apparently you filed on Friday. So, you know, I don't know.
That's the direction of my district leader. He filed in the direction of my district leader.
I don't know. All I know is that this has got to stop.
Bruce Thompson, my district leader.
Not a good thing. It's got to stop. So, you know, and I agree with you. It's not a good situation. It is not a good situation. So, anyway, we are going to get on to our candidates and elected officials. So what I did is I invited most all of the Republican and Independent candidates by email. I sent that out on the 23rd of May, and I asked them to give me a response by the 30th to let me know if they're attending or not. And I have slides prepared for those who responded, and I do see quite a few others who have joined, so based on the numbers, this is how we're going to proceed.
Cecily, when we have a stand-up council, I can figure out the time.
I'm fine.
Oh, you're all right.
I'm fine.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with countywide positions, alphabetically, and then we'll move on to the legislative districts and district contests. So each candidate is going to have 2 to 3 minutes, and they're going to share with us what they honestly feel they can change or accomplish if elected. I do not want to hear about why I'm running. I want to hear about what do you plan to change or accomplish. And I guess I shouldn't use the word if, because we all know we're supposed to be positive when elected. And then we'll have 2 questions from the audience. And if we do that, I think I'm going to get you out of here before it's dark. So
how much time? Is it 2 or 3?
Do it at 3. If they can be done at 3, super. And if not, we'll just shut them off totally. So if it, and we do have a timer. It's right over there. So the first person I'm going to ask to come up is At.Alene Lindstrand. At.Alene is running for auditor. She's a Spokane native. Business degree in business and marketing. She's a successful realtor. She's a member of the Planning Commission, which is a thankless job that takes up a tremendous amount of time. Very active with CAPER, very active with the elections office, election observer, things that way. And she educates anybody that asks on error-free ballots. I mean, if we could only teach people how to fill out ballots, it would certainly help a lot. So At.Alene, come on up here.
Thank you very much. Did I get this? There we go.
That's my fault.
Is it better?
Yeah,
Is this,
hold up close.
can you hear me now?
You're a rock star. Put it right up here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And what will I do when I'm elected, not if? I am very passionate about your vote and my vote for security. We don't have adequate security. Some of the security down at the election office is a door opener. It's a card slider. That is not security. There's a lot of things that we can do better. We have the equipment to, all it has to do is be hooked up to the internet with cameras. We don't have to buy a single thing for this county. That would go a long way towards security, true security. Been very active with voter education. I had a conversation just today with Fairchild, and they're working on trying to find me the right person to talk to out there. Voter education is huge. Every time I talk to people, nobody knows what I'm talking about, and they're happy to hear it, but the only way to know this information on voter education is to be an observer. That's not right. You all have the right to know how your ballots are processed, what duplication means, and why in 2010 almost 25,000 ballots were duplicated. That is a problem. We need to correct that. We can do it. As auditor, I will do voter education. There's public service announcements. There's all kinds of opportunities. I would even be doing it down at the adult education. No different than what I've been doing now down at the college. I could do that. I would do that. The other things have to do with, I'm a business person. I am not a politician. Please don't insult me. I know that none of you have. I believe in taking business principles and inserting them into government. The best government is run like a business. Businesses have to do bottom lines. They have to be accountable. They need to be transparent because the government requires them to be. But nobody's requiring the government to be. So you have to have integrity. You have to have somebody that's passionate, that wants to make it right. I do. And we can. And like I said, it's all about the business aspect of making government accountable. All those things on my flyer on the back table, I didn't put them on there of what is important to me because they'd be nice and they sound good. It's because they're not already being done. With good management, it comes with the state auditor that comes around and audits every year a portion of it. And when they say lacking internal controls, what does that mean? Well, to me it sounds like the auditor isn't auditing, and that's what I will do. Thank you very much.
Hang on, you got some questions coming. Any questions for At.Alene?
At.Alene, what's your take on the amount of voter fraud going on this morning?
That's a tough question because when you actually say voter fraud, it has to be proved. I can talk about irregularities, I can talk about lack of security, I can talk about problems that can encourage those things, but I will not talk about voter fraud. That is a term that I cannot use because it does need to be pursued with legal.
And that means it has to be prosecuted, correctly? Correct?
It would need to be prosecuted to talk about actual fraud.
And that means that we should be talking to our potential prosecutor.
I have done that.
All right. And his response was?
Yes, he would.
All right. We'll, I'm expecting that he will be elected. I'm not certain, there's nothing certain about this, but we're going to hold him to it because that was part of I volunteered on voter recounts and saw so many anomalies, it was sickening. So I want to find that out for certain from him. Thank you very much, At.Alene.
Thank you.
Any other questions for At.Alene? Oh, they're letting you off easy.
Off easy. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Doug Orr. Doug Orr is running for sheriff. There's a distinct difference between the two candidates. Dr. Orr's resume is very impressive. And, I look at Ozzie, and he's a very imposing figure. And I'm sitting there, and Doug, no offense, you're not. And I just go, You know, it's almost like brain versus brawn, or I'm going, this is crazy. I can't think of two totally different people running for this office. And so obviously there were far too many educational things for me to list there. And so again, the question is, when elected, what do you plan to implement and change within the Sheriff's Department?
That looks impressive, but at my house, if you can't put the seat down, none of it matters. 3 things I'm going to change. $300 million jail. We don't need it. You can't afford it. We need to build a smaller, $20 to $40 million facility, a community correction center, to house smart justice programs, to draw down the jail population, and keep those people from coming back to our system. If you want to learn more about the smart justice concept, there's a conservative think tank called rightoncrime.com, R-I-G-H-T, on crime, rightoncrime.com. Learn more about it there. The second thing, property crimes. Compared to other counties, including their contract cities, our property crime rate is embarrassingly high. We can draw that down. A good strategy we have available to us is a researched, evidence-based program out of Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach, the size of the city almost analogous to Spokane, the county the same size as Spokane. They've seen by profiling the offender, not putting the focus on the crime, but putting the focus on the criminal, profiling the offender, increasing the odds of getting the right suspect threefold. They've increased their clearance rate 400%. I'm going to bring that to Spokane, get it up and running 6 months to a year. $20 million of impact they've seen back to their community. $1.5 million back to the agency. And the third thing, civilian oversight. The hallmark of a mature police agency is the ability to be answerable. That not only means saying you're sorry, that means asking forgiveness. When I interviewed with the Deputy Sheriff's Association, I charged them with the fact that they need to do justice and do it humbly. Because when you walk away from that humility, you end up doing something selfish. You forget who you're working with and who you're working for. That's the kind of sheriff I want to be, and that's the kind of sheriff you deserve. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Will you give us your word that you will support your oath and support the Constitution of the United States?
Yes, you have. The question was, will I give you the promise that I will uphold the Constitution and uphold my oath? Unequivocally, yes.
Okay. You get 3.
You get 3. Matt.
You used the term smart justice twice. That's the hallmark of Brian Briggs' Democratic run for county prosecutor. Can you define that term and tell us how it's different from what we're implementing here in Spokane County today?
The concept, and I don't know if that's fair to say that Brian that's his philosophy. It's Larry Haskell. Well, we may have co-opted that, but the idea that you can change a person's thinking and create a better person. I've always told people that the media tells us that there's the good guy and the bad guy. No, there's the well-meaning. That's people like you and me. Maybe we've had a DUI, but really nothing more than that. We support society. We're productive in society. Then there's the weak, those people who have, for one reason or the other, made poor choices but had a very poor social background. And then there's the willful, those people that have demonstrated that they are unable or are not amenable to treatment. The idea that we can get the weak and we can change their thinking and keep them from coming back into the system draws down the jail population. That's smart justice.
How's that different from what's being done today with the advances in criminal court, DUI court, drug court?
And Matt's question is, how is that different than what we're doing today? What the Criminal Justice Reform Commission, the Regional Criminal Justice Reform Commission mapped out in their blueprint was the idea that the right people need to get that treatment. there has to be an effective screening tool, an effective risk needs assessment done, and that's not really being done today. And a lot of people like to blame what's happening with our revolving door on the judges. To a certain extent, that might be true, but maybe they're not well educated on who they're getting into the system.
Okay, and one last question.
Could you tell us your position on support for SCOPE and what you feel about that organization?
SCOPE is probably the most effective and efficient human capital that we have inside of law enforcement. The city police have the cops, the sheriff's department has the SCOPE. I'd love to increase that. Probably the better part of the sheriff's department is made up of that strength, and I would do everything I could to encourage that.
Thank you. Okay, and I don't have a slide for our next candidate, but it's our current sheriff, Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. And Virginia Warren was very kind and gave you all handouts, so you can read all about him, and I won't give him a big long introduction. So come on up here.
Cecily, you are right. There is a difference between us. My opponent's never led anything. 27 years of law enforcement experience, and he's never rose above the rank of corporal. Ever. He's never led. There is a big difference there. I have a bachelor's degree in marketing, management, and criminal law. My opponent just told
So when you're elected, Ozzie, what do you plan to do, please?
What
this is, we've all, I mean, you're on the radio this afternoon. We've heard you.
Okay. So what I plan to do is actually continue to solve the problems this community has. My opponent just said that I'm for a $300 million jail. Folks, that's not true. When Bonnie Mager tried to build a $265 million jail in this community by building it downtown, I said no. This community cannot afford that because it also cost $8.5 million more to run that new facility. $8.5 million more. My opponent wants to talk about smart justice. What he doesn't do is give Mark Richard and myself, Judge Marino, and David Bennett, the consultant that we hired to bring smart justice concept into this community. He doesn't give any of the credit to the people who actually worked on that. So we will continue to work with smart justice. What we are doing is, at Geiger, we have classes that teach people how to get a job, how to fill out a job resume, drug and alcohol treatment. We have also moral recognition treatment, which is good from bad. And we went out and we got 300 businesses in this area to take a chance and hire people coming out of Geiger and giving them a chance to cure the three problems of people going into jail, which is education, lack of, 97% have a high school education or less, employment, 68% don't have employment, and 68% don't have housing. So we are working diligently on smart justice. We are working with the pastors, the faith-based community, bringing them in to work with all of us in government and in the nonprofits. And we're actually targeting with Happy Watkins and Judith Gilmore, and we're trying to take what we're doing at Geiger and putting it in the community before they get arrested and solve the problems now. That's what I'll do. I'm continuing to do that. Folks, since 2007, violent crime in this community, when we instituted the Violent Crime and Drug Task Force, has gone down 56% in the unincorporated areas. 56%. In the valley, it's gone down 24%. Now, my opponent says there's not much that a sheriff or a police officer can do about violent crime. It's on his video. But he makes a point that, well, we can do something about property crime. Folks, we have. We lowered property crimes in the unincorporated area since 2004 by 8%.
Question time. Questions?
I'd like to know what you have for statistics
evidence
Hold on.
property crimes have decreased?
Hold on.
What I have is,
People can't hear, so.
Yes, Sheriff, I'd like to know what evidence you have that and the statistics and evidence that those property crimes have decreased.
those statistics are reported to the state of Washington and WASPIC, and you can pull them up online and look at them for yourself. That's where they come from. They are going down, and we have worked really, very diligently. One thing my opponent doesn't point out is there's a reason that our property crimes, and quite frankly our crime rates in general, are a little bit higher than across the board. It's called one thing, folks. It's crime check. Go find a community in this state that has the same report system that we do for crime. You won't find it. Maybe King County has something similar. But our crime statistics, when crime check went away in 2004, property crime went like this. 2006, 2007. Do you think we changed anything? No, we eliminated your ability to report crime. That's what happened. Now, when crime check came back, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013 in the unincorporated areas of Spokane County, and go to WASPIC's website, you will see a 5% decrease in 13 alone in the unincorporated property crime rate.
Thank you. Question here?
Ozzie, I live in the 4th District, and 2 years ago, when you ran for office, I think I was shocked, along with several other people, when we received a mailer with Matt Shea's Democrat opponent, Amy Biviano. And you've since said I didn't endorse her, but it's very difficult for an elected official to get their handshake with a Democrat on the front cover of a mailer without their permission. And the quote that was on here as well said, "Now is the time to put partisanship aside for the good of our community." I hold integrity in our elected officials very highly. And for those of you who don't know, Amy Biviano, she was about as far left as you can get. And I'm questioning your character, I guess, after I received this in your integrity, that you'd be more willing to put in somebody like her into office to represent me in the 4th District, to take votes for me in Olympia, somebody who doesn't even believe that a minor needs to be notified, needs to have their parent notified as a parent. So could you please explain, because I'm having difficulty believing that this was not an endorsement, and I'm finding it frustrated, as Cecily brought up tonight about the Civil War and the GOP. This is the kind of thing that I'm struggling with. So could you please explain this mailer from 2 years ago?
Test. Be more than happy to. If you take a look, folks, at many of the websites in this community of candidates, you're going to find my photograph on many of them. Many. Had Lisa Brown run when Nancy McCaslin ran against her? Guess what? You probably see my photograph there, because she caught me at a function and said, "Hey, can I take a picture?" And yeah, I have no issues with that. Now, did I endorse Lisa Brown? No. Did I endorse Amy? No. And if you really want to know the fact of the matter, why don't you ask Matt about the meeting that I had after that, and said, "Matt, be more than happy to do a photograph with you and give you a statement." And the last time I offered that to Matt was right before the CV forum at the high school, and Matt said, "I'm not coming." I tried my best to do the same for Matt. But that apparently, Brenda, is not what your character is about. The full disclosure, the full story. So Matt had an opportunity to have the same thing, a photograph and a statement, and he didn't take it.
Thank you.
There was one more question.
No, we've had 2 questions. We're fine. Thank you.
We had 4, got 3.
Because they were short, we have gone over this overtime in the speech, overtime in the questions. Go with one question. Go ahead, Virginia. Jeez.
I want to tell you how this man handled the murder.
Trying to get out of here tonight.
I want to tell you how this man handles emergency. A few years ago, I was in charge of the Republican booth at the fair. I happened to be home because I had somebody else scheduled for that day. I heard on the radio that Medical Lake had decided to have all of their Medical Lake patients, mental patients, take a day at the fair. Well, you may remember what happened. The mental patients who had the keys to the cells let this one man empty his room, put everything in a backpack, walk out to the bus with a person standing there, an employee. He got on the bus with all of his possessions in a backpack, and he rode to the fair. Anyway, he rode to the fair. At the fair, of course, one person was in charge of something like 11
What is your
people or
question,
something
Virginia?
like that. And anyway, he decided he wanted to have a little trip by himself.
Virginia,
he didn't want to spend
this
the day
is a
at the fair.
question and answer time.
It's not a question, but anyway, I want to tell you what
we got that.
here did. He managed to get...
how many of you all remember this incident?
You remember that? He not only caught the criminal...
I'd like a question asked.
He caught the criminal, and not only that, but he made the state make a few changes. They no longer allow people who are in Medical Lake with mentally ill, who have killed people. They don't let them out for a day at the park or a day at the fair or anyplace else. And anyway, they also made him pay the expenses, and I guess I better stop.
Thank you.
But anyway, this man probably saved a lot of lives, and I have been a devoted fan of Ozzie's ever since, and I will help him get elected anytime he runs for anything.
Very good. Thank you.
To answer a question on that.
But we made up one. It's okay.
All right. Folks, what Virginia mentioned was I actually did make the governor pay. I made the governor pay for that escape, for our expenses. And quite frankly, folks, there is no war. It comes down to character and everything else. And it really comes down to principle over politics. For me, I've heard that I don't support the Second Amendment. How many of you heard that while I was president of the Sheriffs and Chiefs Association that we backed IA 594? How many of you heard that? I heard it. That's not true. As a matter of fact, I am one of the few sheriffs that signed on to fight that bill publicly, and because of that, I have received the endorsement of the NRA.
Okay,
there are very few
this has been the most difficult speaker. You know, this is supposed to be what you plan to do when elected, and we learned from Ozzie he will continue the course that he's on. And then we had a lot of political talk, and that's what I'm trying not to get into tonight, because, you know, guys, I could sit down and tell you why I'm running for something, and it's just that. So let's try and get out of here before the sun goes down and go on to our next candidate, who's Rob Chase. Now, I think I've told you all that I am Rob's treasurer, and the first thing I really want to tell you is that Rob is not a politician. Really, he isn't. He is a citizen's advocate, and he doesn't work for the approval of, you know, the other political people. And I think a big example of that is HB 2309. And that was the one where we would allow people to be able to make partial payments on their property taxes. And guess who was, all the fellow treasurers in the state of Washington were against that. And they were against it because they didn't want to give up the revenue. They, you know, so you're just sitting there going, wow. So anyway, Rob was elected treasurer in 2010. We talked about HB 2309. He's very fiscally responsible. He'll tell you a little, well, he can't because he's going to tell us what he's planning to do. So he did reduce the banking fees by 70%, which was over $100,000. He spent less than his budget How many government officials spend less than their budget? They don't, because they know they're not going to get the same amount the next, or more the next year. He's an EWU graduate BA in Business Administration with an emphasis on operations management. And as an aside, I've got to tell you that that operations management has come in very, very handy. Unbeknownst to Rob, I am good friends with a couple people that work in the Treasurer's Department, and I've got to tell you, they love him, they love the efficiency and the changes in the office. So Rob, what do you plan to do when re-elected? I don't want a campaign talk.
Well, thank you, Cecily. I just have to say, I feel a lot of love in this room tonight. I know it's out there somewhere. As far as the future goes, I think Cecily did a good job of wrapping things up that I have done. You may hate my politics, but I think I've been a good treasurer. You know, in addition to that, we also, for the first time in state history or county history, we went to online auctions. You know, I think there's 2 other counties that tied me doing that, and that saves the taxpayers money, makes it more competitive.
You plan to do that?
No, we have done that.
You continue to plan to do
we're
that?
planning.
Please
Okay,
keep on subject.
one thing that's almost there, not quite, is MoneyGram. And that's where anybody can go down, you know, like an old person that can't get to the courthouse, and go to Walmart and pay their property taxes there. So that's just like happening almost right now. And what I do want to plan on doing is I'm really looking at the state of Idaho did a $50,000 tax exemption on personal property tax, and that helps small businesses, people that live in trailers, and you know, from what I can see, the ramifications really aren't that big for the county, but we'll have to study that some more, get feedback from other people. And
there's a straw poll. There's something on the back.
Oh, let's see. As far as the future goes, I mean, there's a lot of things. Well, I don't really shouldn't mention it, you know, but I do want to issue an executive order to go to gold standard in Spokane County. You know. We'll just turn part of the treasurer's office over to, like, you know, the people, instead of cashiering, will be minting coins, you know, and all that. So, are there any questions? There being no questions, no speeches? Okay, well, I guess I'm doing a good job. And the 2 people running against me are both CPAs, but I have 2 CPAs that work there that are very good. So,
hey, Rob?
Yeah, okay, Mike?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to this next cycle for you, when you win,
yeah.
You've already done well at the state level. Now, do you plan on a follow-up state level action?
Well, actually, I know all 15 legislators from this area, and a person who helped me quite a bit with the partial payment bill was Brian Dansel from the 7th District up there. Did a wonderful job. No, he seems like such an affable, nice guy and all that, but he can really turn up the juice and put pressure on lobbyists, you know, that I was able to see. Matt Shea introduced the bill last session for the first time, broke the ice on that, and then Michael Baumgartner introduced this Senate version, and then there's only two local officials who endorsed that bill, and one was a mayor of Sunnyside and one was Ozzie Knezovich, so we appreciated that too. And also I got a lot of help from Tim Ormsby, you know, who you know, you kind of have to reach out sometimes. And one problem we have, sometimes politics is like junior high, you know. They say, oh, I'm not going to be your friend anymore because you're playing with those people, you know. And, you know, we all live on this earth together. You know, we all change our ideas, too, as we go along and learn. So, you know, let's all be civil about it, you know. We're all in the same boat together.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, they're letting you off easy tonight. Super. I did invite Mary Cooney, and she responded letting me know that she was in Seattle, and I did not invite Biviano. I know some of you had some photographs you wanted autographed, but I did not do that.
She's got a couple of questions.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the legislative districts, and we'll just go down in order. And our first person is Tim Benn. He was born and raised in Spokane. A lot of different AA degrees, general business, management, marketing, that type of thing. He's a small business owner. He is definitely a child advocate, and he's a small business advocate. And I think you're going to, you know, if know Tim. He works tirelessly against the government intervention in our parenting rights and their incessant programs to capture our youth from cradle to adulthood. So we all know what Lenin said about giving me your children for 4 years, and this man's fighting against it.
I hope you got that last comment.
No, I know we're supposed to talk about what we're going to do. I think it's
Please.
I think it's a little naive in Washington legislature, in the House of Representatives with a Democrat majority, to say what I'm going to do. But I would like to try to take power away from government entities.
Don't try, only do.
I've already worked on it. Now, last session, what I did do was I worked on a bill very hard. It got support from the Republicans and the Democrats. And what it did was it took a state agency out of our local building and fire department code enforcement, because you had social workers shutting down businesses over interpretation of state codes, and you trapped businesses between local codes and state codes where there was a difference. And what I want to tell you about the power of these agencies that I would like to take away, had a fundraiser for the child care and had a visitor come. She worked for a child care center. That center was closed down over paperwork issues from the past. Nothing criminal, no children were at risk. But because she worked at that child care center that was closed down, her background was disqualified. I've heard from ladies in tears that have lost rights to their grandchildren, that can't volunteer at their local school anymore because this state agency, without a hearing, can disqualify your background from working with vulnerable adults and children. And they find out from an employer after looking 3 years for a job and not getting one that says, hey, look at this on your background. I don't know what this means, but this state agency doesn't like you. We're destroying people's lives without constitutional authority. I want to take that away from state agencies like DOE, Department of Early Learning, OSPI. They cannot just decide that you're a criminal. They are acting like 3 branches of government in their own administrative system. They're destroying lives. I want to protect women, children, small business, but our constitutional rights, because they're gone. If they can take away someone's rights to work without a hearing, what constitution do we see? Questions?
Do we have questions for Tim?
Yeah, I have a question, Cecily. Tim, what can we do to help you make a dent in the 3rd district and win, or at least get a lot closer to winning?
Well, of course, money runs elections. So, you know, right now I haven't even gotten enough donations because we've given up on the 3rd district. I don't even have enough donations to print flyers this time around. And the reason is because we've given up on the 3rd district. But I'm going to tell you what, you've got Senator Baumgartner that's got a challenger, and they're getting brave and they're getting bold to come after traditionally Republican-held districts because they feel they own your city. So we've got to push back with volunteerism, sign locations. I think that Baumgartner should campaign all around the edges of the 3rd district and let the people in the 3rd district know that a Republican can win and that we're going to push back against the machine that's built downtown. It's our money. Our money is actually going into the Democrats' campaigns in the 3rd district. So we've got to point that out. And I believe that most of the people in the 3rd district are independent. They're not Democrat or Republican. They're independent because they feel they're getting stepped on both sides. They read the Spokesman Review and they get their updates from their unions. So we've got to get the truth to them and
That's a problem.
Call them. Call them, donate, help me get out signs, help me doorbell.
Anybody else? Question? Way up in the top. Can you talk really loud, At.Alene?
Comment. I am working, building and have already started working in the 3rd district to help him. I think that is countywide. We'll do a lot better for those of us running for county positions. But it is exactly what you said. And working together, I think, just makes it stronger. One of the things that you asked that question, what can you help? She can help work in that area.
Okay, so
Volunteers and money.
Her comment was volunteer and work. And I just want you to know that just as a Republican number, in the 3rd district, Kathy McMorris Rogers always won, except in the last election, she lost in the 3rd. So we keep letting it slip, and we're going to allow Baumgartner a bigger fight. We're going to allow the 4th district to see a bigger fight from the Democrats.
You saw the graphs.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, this is fun. I got 3 microphones.
You're such a controller.
Okay, we're going to go on to the 4th district now. Again, alphabetical by first name. So Bob McCaslin is up first. He is a WSU graduate. He has a master's in school administration. He's a kindergarten teacher at Central Valley School District. He's lived in Spokane for 42 years. He believes in upholding the Constitution, and as an adopted child, he certainly believes in the right of life and improving our adoption systems and really education in that area. So Bob, would you come up, please? Just hold it up to your mouth.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to speak tonight.
And again, what are you planning to do when you win?
Thank you for holding my feet to the fire.
She always does.
Yes, I bet she holds your feet to the fire the most there, John. First of all, we've heard some other people talk about how government agencies operate. One of the ways to get rid of the spend it or lose it type of thing is to allow government agencies to carry over budget surpluses and actually put those government agencies first in line to be funded the following budget year. That would save us millions of dollars to be able to do that. The other thing that I plan on doing is keeping my property rights pledge that I signed back in November with CAPER. And I think that's a thing I'm on the Spokane Valley City Planning Commission, and we're seeing it every 2 weeks when we meet on a Thursday night in City Hall. There's all kinds of things happening with the shoreline jurisdiction things going on. When I was doorbelling down by the river, I got an earful. And the other thing that I'm going to do is keep my taxpayer protection pledge. And we've got a problem in Olympia, and it's a spending problem. And until we come around and stop being willing to trade things for funding, like the North-South Freeway, for instance, we're going to be in trouble. And building the North-South Freeway is not a solution if we raise the gas tax. And I will always vote against that. Thank you. Yeah, questions?
Are there any questions?
Questions?
We have a question.
Do you know about transferring public lands from the federal government back to the state, and then 5% of all of that land that is sold, the money goes to education? Are you aware of that possibility?
Yes, I am.
Would that be something you support?
I would fight against the taking people's land away from them to fund education. I think the best way to fund education is successful businesses. Amen?
Amen.
Yeah.
But this is, we would get those lands back from the federal government, as many other states have done.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
And once those lands come back to the state, we have to dispose of them. We are not allowed to keep all of them. Yes, the state manages land much better than the federal government. Managed correctly, we have a lot less forest fires and whatever else. But large percentage of that has to be sold by law, and 5% of that would help to fund education. 5% of all those sales go to education. So the important thing is, would you be in favor of doing that? And would you support putting it to education and not the general fund?
Yes, and mainly because anytime you put money in the general fund, it disappears. So, absolutely.
And did you know that that 5% will more than pay for what the Supreme Court says we have to give?
Thanks for the information. Yeah, I don't claim to know everything, and I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
For those of us that are concerned about rights on water, the river, the letter we just got, for those of us that live on the Spokane River, we still are not certain that we're going to be able to launch our boats this year. This is involving multi-government agencies, starting with Homeland Security, that is concerned that we're going to blow up the dam. And then I called the dam and found that the person answering the phone sounded like he was from the Middle East. The question is, this is going to affect a number of different governmental offices, perhaps yours, and perhaps even those that involve our property taxes, because if we can't launch our boats, our property values will go down on the river.
Yes, they will.
And by the way, Eric Cantor was defeated.
We know.
What will you? Are you aware of this issue? You mentioned Caper.
Yes.
And how are you going to address it? And that same question goes out to every other politician in this room.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary.
I think the first thing we do is we make sure that there's local control, and I think being on the Planning Commission, we don't have power like the City Council does, but I know I've got several friends on the City Council, and they are doing their darndest to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen, because your property value has to be tied into your property rights. And so I would definitely fight for that.
Thank you. Okay. So our next candidate is Diana Wilhite, and I don't have a slide for Diana, so let's give her a minute for her to tell us a little bit about herself, and then what you plan to do when you go to Olympia.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecily. It's not on? Oh, there it is. Thanks, Cecily. Background, business owner for 33 years, a fiscal conservative. Prior to owning a business, I was a high school teacher and substituted in the school districts here, but I was unable to get a full-time job, so I joined my husband in his business for 33 years. In addition to that, I am, as I said, a fiscal conservative, but I believe government intrudes too much in our lives, and I believe we should get them out of it. Especially when it comes to social issues, I think they need to stay out of our lives and let us live it the way we want. Now, what I will do when I go to Olympia, one of the things they talk about it when you become a new legislature is they want you to introduce a bill. And I think rather than introducing a new bill, that what I would like to do is see about reducing some of the bills that we have, taking a look at some of the things that are already on the books and figuring out why they are bad for business and asking the legislatures to take them off the books. I think that would be a good thing. We have far too many things that are regulating our lives. I think we need to take a look at it. One of the things that Benn said is, I believe the agencies have too much power. And I would want to look at going into those agencies and taking a look at what they're doing and refining their abilities to do things. Labor and industry, as a small business owner, they come in and the first thing they want to do is fine you if they find an error. And what I think they should be doing is educating us. If we're not doing something right, then they need to educate us on what it is that we should be doing so that we're following the regulations with regard to the safety of our employees and other things, rather than immediately fining us first thing off the bat. I understand then if they come back to that business and they find you not in compliance, then they should fine you, but not right off the bat. I've talked to a number of businesses, and they talk about it.
So you plan to work as a coalition and
Absolutely,
see if you
absolutely. And then Tim brought up about the regulation that we have in education, and I think we need to step back. I think control should be at the local level. The local school districts know what's best for their people and for their constituents. If they don't like what's going on, they can unelect their school board members, which has happened in East Valley. So more local control, I think, is important to have because the people on the ground know. This gentleman talked about the fact that he's not going to be able to use his river with his boat, and I think that's deplorable. We need to find out who are all these agencies and why are they doing this to you, and we need to do something about it. If that takes legislation, then I would be willing to do that. So that's my plans if I am elected by you to go to the legislature. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Look at that lady. She's right on time. Questions?
Laura?
Do you think that Planned Parenthood should continue to get funding?
I believe that we spend money on things that we should not. I think that there are more important things that the money in Olympia should be spent on than on Planned Parenthood.
Any other questions? Boy, you guys are easy. Thank you. Okay, our next candidate will be Leonard Christian. And somebody hollered from the floor as to how come people were running against Leonard. And the reason is Leonard was not elected. Leonard was appointed. He wasn't the choice of the PC.
You don't have a slide for me either.
I bet I do. And yeah, you responded, Leonard. Thank you. And so that's the reason. I mean, it's when you're appointed, and this has happened to everybody that's been appointed, they have candidates that run against them. So,
I'm glad that on the record.
yeah. So anyway, John will fix that up. And this is what I picked up about Leonard. He has a Business of Science degree in aeronautics, an MBA from Webster's. He was appointed the 4th District Representative to replace Larry Krause. He's a realtor. I know he's a pilot, and he loves his airplanes. He's a retired U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant. He also works with the Civil Air Patrol, and that's what I know about you.
Okay.
You're also have been a district leader, resigned when you got appointed. You are a PCO. You ran, not this time?
Yeah.
And he ran for Auditor in 2010. And has been very active in the Republican Party.
First of all, thank you to the Northwest Grassroots for putting this together, because the number one question as I'm out doorbelling is not what's going on in the economy, but when are we going to have a debate? And so this is a good way to start off, so I do appreciate you guys hosting this out.
We're right from the debate.
Okay, we're waiting for it. That's going to be great. So, to think about what I'm going to be working on in 2015, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've done in the past and how it's going to tie forward. When I was 18 years old, I went down and swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and gave the next 21 years of my life doing so in the United States Air Force. I served in the Air Force protecting America and the Constitution of the United States. I intend to continue to do that. I have not given up that oath to continue to protect the Constitution of the United States. We talked about abortion. In the past, my wife and I have been strong advocates for abortion. In fact, excuse me. Again, pro-life. Against abortion. In fact, we've been together supporting the pro-life cause directly and counseling my wife and counseling in her support financially and time for almost 15 years. As we traveled around the country, my wife would go and volunteer at the local clinics, and that's why we were able to get support here. When we got here, my wife immediately went down and started counseling, and I can tell you, that woman has directly saved a lot of babies, and to her, and I appreciate her for that. In fact, she's been a huge supporter of mine. Monday will be our 30th anniversary. So, we're getting it. So since we've been working on that, I intend to work on that in this session to help defund Planned Parenthood. And that's one of the goals I worked on last year, or this year, and I will continue to work on it in the future. Now you want to get into some specific items? How about this? The west side of the state is wanting $3.5 billion with a B for flood mitigation. Do you know where they want to get that? Out of our pockets. That's right. Over here on our side of the state, they want to add $975 to every single transaction of a real estate nature. That's just one of the ways they plan on getting the money. That's whether it's a vacant lot for $2,000, now you put another $975 on it. Now I could get that over there in Seattle where the average house price is $400,000. We still have $50,000 houses here that people can't live in. Adding another $975 transaction fee is ridiculous. So I'm working with the realtors already because I see that coming. Our illustrious president, Mr. O, has decided he's going to, by executive order us to meet some EPA standards. Guess what? He's forcing the legislature to take on that battle. He's not doing it himself. He's forcing it on us. And so we need to fight on that ourselves this year. So I guess I'll open this to questions.
Yes. Questions for Leonard?
I like it.
Okay, we got one up in the top.
Hurry.
Hurry.
Run.
Sorry, your time's up.
So you said that you plan on defunding Planned Parenthood, and I'm just a little confused. I want you to clarify, because I know when you came down to our center, you had said that you felt like you could not defund Planned Parenthood, that instead you would take some of that funding. What you wanted to do was split it evenly so that crisis pregnancy centers would get some and Planned Parenthood would get some, and I informed you that we would never take any money because we don't want to take more
You're kind of
taxpayers.
twisting those words, Janine.
Well, did you not say that you did not feel like we could defund Planned Parenthood?
I told you exactly. I don't believe we have the capital ability down there to get all the votes to defund Planned Parenthood. But the best thing we can do is start pulling the money away from them and putting it to where the customers are. And so if we can get more customers in clinics that are pro-life versus pro-choice, the money would be pulled away because of the customers being cared for in the pro-life clinics. So
But it's still taking taxpayers' dollars, is all I'm saying.
It's going to be going anywhere. Let's put them where they're going to do.
Even though I work at a crisis pregnancy center and I would love to see that money, I'm not going to take it from taxpayers.
And but we can put it in other clinics. Yes. Same question about the docs? Is that it?
I think Tim here has a question.
So after lobbying in Olympia as a citizen activist, I know how impossible the job over there can be, watching representatives fight for their constituents. A reality in abortion legislation could possibly be parental notification.
That would be a long way, and that'd be great. That'd go a long way in helping. You're absolutely correct.
And so you support that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Why should a 15-year-old girl be able to go have a surgical procedure without even the parents knowing, but they can't be given an aspirin? Ridiculous. So, should be criminal. So, the doc question, I'm going to tell you right now, if you leave your contact information, I would be glad to have our staff find out why. If you want to leave your information, I will make sure our staff gets back to you on why the river is being, who's responsible for that. Because if it's not law, it's some agency going out on their own.
So with two of the Democrats coming over and rallying with Republicans this last session, do you see that happening again? Is there anything you can do to help that happen again?
Breaking up, Scotty.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
I actually, that's a good question, Aaron. And I got to tell you guys, the reason Spokane does not do real well is because the legislators from the east side of the state don't necessarily work real well together. And we have a lot of caucuses over there for different things, such as we have a transportation caucus, just about a prayer caucus, but an aviation caucus was started last year, or this year after the session. I would believe that the best thing we can do is actually start an east side of the state caucus and start having meetings and try and build a coalition of folks on this side of the state so we can start getting more money directed back to Spokane and our side of the state. But it takes working together in a formal process, just as a Senate Coalition Caucus was able to do. They built a caucus. And I think we could do the same thing for the east side of the state, Senate legislators.
Great, thank you.
All right.
So you know, Devin and I have been talking as far as getting a debate going for the treasurer's position and for the position, whatever it is here with the three of you, so, in the fourth. So anyway, that'll be happening closer to the primary. So now we will go on to position 2, again alphabetically. So Josh Arritola will be first, and I did make up a slide, even though I'm not sure if you're coming or not, but Beva told me you were, so I think this will work. So this is what I've been able to pick up about you, okay? I understand that Josh was born and raised in Washington. He got his BA from the University of Washington, so he's a Husky. He was first lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. Management, Target stores, reading about him, and he was one of the youngest management inductees with Target. And then he moved back to Spokane in 2008 and started At.Loose, which is a management consulting firm, and he is the CEO. And so if I missed anything that's absolutely necessary to speak of, do, otherwise, recognizing that all of these guys have a hard road home going to Olympia that's controlled by Democrats.
Jeff,
What's that?
you're looking at the camera.
Oh, I'm front.
So, you know, I'm saying what you plan to do, but let's be real about it, because you do know that coalitions and things that way are going to have to be built in order to get much done. So, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank Cecily for her 30-minute fair and balanced presentation about why I shouldn't be running against Matt. But that aside, what I'd like to talk about is the challenges that we face. And I really support one of the slides you had up, the 1-term, 2-term, 3-term limit. Matt, thanks for serving 3 terms. I'm here to help out with that. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on actual issues that are dominating our local area.
What do you plan to do when elected?
Thank you very much. This is a non-free speech zone.
Right.
We have to, actually, I'm going to say one more thing real quick that I really feel motivated to share with you guys. There's an old proverb that says, be very weary of someone that wishes to control the information you have, because the true desire of the heart is to control you. And so you need to research, Google, YouTube every single candidate and learn for yourself what the real facts are.
Absolutely.
Okay? There's 3 issues we're running on here. The first one is transportation. There's not been a transportation budget for quite some time. The north-south corridor is going to cost $750 million to complete it. The annual ROI, $450.8 million.
Josh, what are you planning to do? Please.
Cecily, I'm planning on working on transportation. Okay? I'm planning to work on those things and push the corridor forward. Clarified?
So let us know what you're planning to do and how you plan to do it.
You know, folks, thank you so much for having me here. I'm supporting transportation. I'm supporting reforming adoptions and foster care. I'm supporting making this a more business-friendly state. And I plan to do those things to push those issues forward. With that, I'll just take some questions.
What is it about adoption
Adoption?
that needs to be reformed?
We have a broken adoption system. If conservatives continue to fail to lead on social issues, the Democrats will lead and they will drag us along. In our state, if you want to adopt a white baby boy, it's $35,000. A black baby girl, $8,000. We buy and sell children, homeless children, for profit. When conservatives fail to lead, liberals lead. We don't lead in this state on social issues. We need conservative leaders that are going to start leading on these issues like adoptions. Foster care is fundamentally broke. We have families in the foster care system that are taking care of kids that need to get kicked out. And we have families that want to be in the foster care system but can't get through the amount of paperwork. Door knocking, doorbelling. Just 2 weeks ago, I met a wonderful family up in Meade that had started the process to become foster parents but gave up. They gave up because after 6 months of trying to fill out paperwork, there was no one to help them through it. There was no one to help them navigate it, so they gave up. 780 children in our county, real needs, 780 children in our county are currently homeless and what's called free and clear for adoption. For every single child that is without a home, there are 5 families actively seeking to adopt. The problem? Government. And politicians don't want to do anything about the real problems.
Questions?
Rick. Yeah, Josh, I spent my life looking for men who will stand with integrity and can't be bought off. And I feel like for one of the first times in my life, actually the second time in my life, we have a representative who truly represents my views. And I'm curious what you found lacking in his voting record that made you feel more qualified to represent me and that you should run against Matt Shea.
If you really feel that way, you need to vote for Matt.
A question for you. What did you find lacking in Matt Shea that caused you to feel the need to get up and run against him?
The 3 issues I'm talking about: transportation, the lack of movement on the North Spokane corridor; adoptions, nothing; foster care, nothing; business reform, nothing. You see, here's a reality that every single person in this room needs to face. If you believe when you go to politics that you want 100% or nothing, in this state as a conservative, guess what you're going to get? Nothing. That's what you're going to get, and that's why I'm running. We have to start moving the ball forward on important issues. And if we don't elect leaders that can push the ball forward, we're going to get the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, Josh, about a month ago on your campaign Facebook page, you indicated that the reason Microsoft decided to move its data center to Iowa was because of the far right of the party. And I'm curious, who in the legislature do you consider to be the far right, and what vote did they take or not take that caused that to happen?
Goes right back to that 100% or nothing. So let's just start talking about the elephant in the room, Matt Shea, okay? It goes right back to that 100% or nothing. Matt voted against keeping Boeing here in the state, in the special session. 100% or nothing. Now, if you believe that you need to vote against Boeing, Matt's your guy. Okay?
Boeing's leaving anyway.
Yeah, because we're failing to lead. And what I'm saying, and I know I'm not going to go too far into the weeds here because I think there's another question, we need to wrap it up. What I'm saying is we can't be an all or nothing person. I know there was a bill 1100 that wanted to pass the same tax breaks for every single business in the state, which I would support as a small business owner. It's not going to happen. So if you want the all or nothing, businesses keep leaving.
Well, the Boeing bill passed, so if that's why Microsoft's leaving, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it goes back to the principle, Michael, of all or nothing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Bruce?
Yeah, Josh, how do you plan on delivering the north-south freeway without raising, the gas tax has been talked about, and so any other transportation tax? How do you plan on doing that without that stuff, without raising our taxes?
There's a couple steps. The first one is starting to show up at meetings. Okay? That's step number 1. You know how much money we got for the north-south corridor this year, guys? In this biennium? $68,000. You know how much Walla Walla got for a side road? $386,000. You know what the difference was? Their representatives and senators showed up to transportation meetings.
Other questions?
Well, Josh, I've been around 4th District politics for a while, and I've seen Leonard and Diana and Matt, but I haven't seen you. So, I mean, how were you influenced to run? Who influenced you to run, to get into the job?
Yeah, so this is the recruitment question. Was I recruited to run? And the answer is yes, I was. I was recruited by Matt. And all of the news articles that are endless, that are absolutely endless in who we get associated with. So that's who recruited me.
Okay, I think this is getting to where we don't need to be going. The reason I was giving Josh a little more time is because he did not take his 3 minutes to address everyone. So I really do like questions, but if anybody has anything more? Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we will have Matt Shea. Would you put it forward? I don't know where the little clicker went. Thank you. So Matt's been representing us in the 4th District for 6 years. He sits on the Government Accountability and Oversight Committees, Judiciary, and Transportation, all chaired by Democrats. In case some of you forgot, they have the majority. Matt's a driving force behind Washington's Freedom Agenda. The Freedom Agenda has presented the most successful slate of conservative legislation in Washington state in over 20 years, and is based on defending the Constitution, property rights, gun ownership, veterans, and the sanctity of human life while promoting lower taxes, less government, and more freedom. And then you can see some of his accomplishments there. So Matt, if you would step in front of the camera, please.
Appreciate it, Cecily. Thank you. Well, I want to start off by saying something that doesn't and won't change, and that's that our hope is not in man, our hope is in Jesus Christ. And I will... Am I
in front of the camera, over there.
Perfect. I want to make sure also that when I say we can't have any more fake conservatives, people don't want fake conservatives. They want banner carriers for freedom. And I think that that's the message out of Virginia this evening.
That's right.
That is the message. So what am I going to do? I'm going to continue carrying that banner forward for another 2 years. The role of government is to protect our God-given unalienable rights to life, liberty, property, and the ability to defend the same. And what does the Freedom Agenda do? Exactly that. And that's why it's the most successful slate of conservative bills in over 2 decades. That's why we had 12 pieces of legislation signed into law without veto by a liberal governor. Because we were able to have 50 Democrat co-sponsors, build coalitions around issues, and we're going to continue to do that. We are going to continue to do that. So let's talk about life. I co-authored the amendment to defund Planned Parenthood. And you know what? We reached across the aisle and we came within 4 votes of defunding Planned Parenthood, and it was establishment Republicans that didn't want to take a roll call vote, and the Democrats came over and said, why didn't you do it? We think we had the votes to defund Planned Parenthood. I will make sure we introduce that again this year, and I will make sure that we make defunding Planned Parenthood a reality in Washington state. I also authored, and I will continue to introduce and reintroduce a very simple bill, and that's just to say that you need parental notification before an abortion. So let's talk about liberty. I will continue to fight to ban the regulatory use of drones in Washington state. It is anti-business and it is anti-property rights. Now, we won a small battle. The governor, even though he vetoed, put a 13-month moratorium, but we're going to continue to push that issue. Property rights. What are we going to do? First, we're going to work on the transfer of federal lands to the states. I've been working with my great friend, Ken Ivory out of Utah, to make this a reality in Washington because it will solve the McCleary decision. Period, end of story. But also, we've got to look at our local farmers. Regulatory takings is a big issue for our farmers. And we need to make sure, we introduced House Bill 1165, I'll reintroduce it again, to make sure that there is compensation for regulatory takings in Washington state. On the gun issue, I will continue to lead, and as a member of leadership, I helped to very specifically author the amendments and introduce the amendments to stop the push for gun control in Washington. We were successful. I will continue to fight on that issue, and I'm working with the folks that are fighting against I-594 to make sure we don't have gun control in Washington. That's what I'm going to do. And last but not least, I do want to say very, very clearly, 6 years ago I went there and I told everybody what I was going to do, and I did what I said what I was going to do. And one of those things is I will kill the gas tax for the 8th straight time this upcoming session, because that will crush our small businesses. Last but not least, we've been doing all kinds of business reforms. We've had seven of the 12 bills of the Freedom Agenda were passed into law were business reforms. One specifically helping Zaycon Foods, a huge industry here in Spokane Valley. Dock manufacturers, we have 2 here in Spokane County, helping those. We passed a bill to help them get government out of the way so that they can create jobs. And last but not least, we had the ATV bill, which has a potential economic impact of over $50 million over the next 10 years. So going forward, we're going to be introducing bills like legalizing industrial hemp, which will mean $120 million impact, positive economic impact in Southwest Washington to the pulp and paper industry. That's what freedom and liberty means. And I want to quote the Attorney General of Washington State, who sent me a letter recently. He's a Democrat. On behalf of the Office of the Attorney General, I want to thank you for supporting our work to achieve permanent homes for children in foster care. And he has a big, nice thing on the bottom that says, "Thanks, Matt, for your work on those issues." I'm proud of that, and I will continue to push that in Washington State, and I will welcome your questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Over here, over here.
Yeah, you've both had a question, haven't you? Over where?
Over there in the front.
Gretchen. Well, she had a question too, but go ahead.
Okay, one of my pet peeves are ferries and the waste of the ferry system, and nobody talks about the ferry system. Is there anything we can do? Yeah, is there anything we can do? Because as I understand it, it takes a lot of money to operate ferries, and there is a lot of waste, but nothing's getting done.
Well, as a member of the Transportation Committee and a member of leadership, I sat down with Ed Orcutt, and we actually helped negotiate parts of the transportation bill, particularly relating to ferries, ferry systems, ferry ridership, and waste in the ferry system. The biggest thing that we see right now is in how ferries are constructed. And when I sat down and we negotiated that part of the transportation budget, which was eventually passed by the legislature this last session, I very specifically looked at, for example, bureaucrats engineering ferries instead of letting the engineers engineer ferries. That's why we got a ferry that's leaning to one side right now, derisively called the At.Alene class, because we're letting bureaucrats run the show. So one of the reforms that we've been pushing is to make sure that the engineers are the ones that actually do it, and we leave it in private hands. That's how we can get rid of the waste in the ferry system, is to privatize as much as we possibly can, and to also make sure that we have follow-up on these engineering things, and we don't have a bureaucrat making a decision without anybody overseeing it, because clearly it didn't work. So thank you for that. Yep.
Michael.
Yeah, Matt. Governor Inslee is talking about the carbon tax credit.
Yes.
You feel you'll be able to block that because he's going to do it without going to the legislature, from what I understand.
We think we have the votes to block it if it came up in the legislature. If he does it through executive order, that's going to be a much tougher proposition. The carbon fuel, low carbon fuel standard is going to add literally $1.17 to every gallon of gasoline. We have a huge trucking industry in Spokane Valley. A lot of them are my friends. One of them sent me an analysis that it would literally raise his bottom line by $3 million per year if this goes through. I think we got the votes to stop it if it's legislative. Executive order is going to be a much, much tougher proposition, and that's probably why they're doing it that way. Yep.
Sandy?
Yeah. You said that you were 4 votes short for the defunding of Planned Parenthood, but I understood that that was a voice vote. So how can you tell it was 4 votes?
It was
when it's by voice.
It was a voice vote, and the Democrat who leads that part of the caucus came over and told us how many votes he actually had. And so we believed that, you know, based on what he said and doing our own vote count, we have 2 Republicans that vote pro-choice, that we came within 4 votes of it. He actually came over to immediately following it, and myself and Representative Overstreet talked with him for quite a while. He was pretty distressed about it too, but that's how we knew from him. Yes?
Okay, Matt, now you're against background check stuff with guns, and I addressed the issue with child care providers, but
we have state agencies making rulings on people's backgrounds, basically criminalizing them without a day in court, not just in child care, but in foster care. That's part of the reason why we don't have a lot of those foster families. I know you put up an amendment on a bill a couple years ago in regards to that. Would you be willing to sponsor legislation to take away state agencies' judicial power?
Absolutely, as part of a complete reform of the Administrative Procedures Act. One of the interesting parts about those background checks, in fact, we're just working with a constituent on it right now. 10 years ago, an agency makes a finding of fact, no judge, no trial, no counter witnesses, and yet it stays on her record and she cannot be employed. And so we've been working in the Judiciary Committee to address the expungement of what we call these administrative findings. So that's another part of it, and I think is an interim step forward, because we like to try to take these interim steps in the right direction. We did it with workers' compensation with L&I, for example. We'll do it the same way here. We take these interim steps forward so we can move toward freedom and allow these folks some opportunity to salvage what reputation that they have left based on what these bureaucrats did to them. So absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Full due process. Amen. Thank you very much. Yep.
That's me. I can't get close to the other microphones. Okay. Now, I saw Jeff Holy's signs out in the hallway, but I don't think I see Jeff Holy, right? Okay. So, Michael Baumgartner, 6th District, come talk to us.
Well, thanks, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for holding this. And, you know, I've seen a lot of things in my life, been to close to 80 countries, spent a lot of time with Iraqis and Afghans. Actually, once put an Afghan mutiny down, and some of that feels a lot like this here tonight, actually. But a lot of you participated in helping me win in 2010 in what was the most expensive race in state history, when we beat far-left liberal but former business chair, the Chamber of Commerce, former regent Chris Marr, in a lot of races, a lot of people said we couldn't win. And I really appreciate you doing that. And since I've been in office, we've done some great things. Primarily, we've written balanced budgets, haven't relied on big tax increases. We've taken the majority from a position of the minority, which is a really, really big deal and was extremely difficult to do. We've fought for funding here in Spokane, so we begin to get our fair share in things like building our medical school. But primarily what we've done is stop the continued progressive liberal onslaught of this, led by Seattle, of this state, and our state is getting more far left. So a lot of what we do is play defense. What we're going to do next year, after you, hopefully you help me get back there, and what again is going to be a very, very tough race, is we're going to keep Jay Inslee in his box. You have not seen the real Jay Inslee yet. You do not want to see the real Jay Inslee yet, because we have the majority in the Senate. Now remember, the way the numbers work, there's 49 senators, takes 25 to be in charge. Right now we got 24 Republicans, 2 Democrats crossed over to put us at 26. We just lost one of the Democrats. We'll have a very tough time holding that seat, so we're back at 25. So you're looking at the thin red line in terms of keeping Republicans in the majority. Now in the House, we got a lot of great House races. House Republicans are at 43 seats. Takes 50 to be in charge. So a lot of what we do is play backstop defense. And I know we got a lot of great House Republicans with a lot of great ideas. We're going to continue to help to work with them to fight for their ideas. But we're going to continue to put Jay Inslee in his box. We're going to go on offense on some big things. I've been outspoken about the need to make this a right-to-work state. I don't believe you should be forced to belong to any organization just to put food on the table. And I believe that's an issue of human freedom, and I think it's something we can get done. I'd encourage everybody to look at what Evergreen Freedom Foundation is doing, what Washington Policy Center is doing on that issue. Another issue that we're going to keep continuing to do that I'm very proud of is I'm going to keep sending out my staffers, bringing them onto my team, and then sending them out as force multipliers for freedom. I take a lot of pride in the fact that Mike Cathcart helped me won, is now doing great work with Spokane Home Builders. Take a lot of pride in the fact that Ronnie Valencia worked with me, is now at Freedom Foundation. One of my former staffers is now the state party chair. And I love bringing young people onto my campaign in my office, having them work, and then send them out. So if you have young people that want to work, continue to send them out to work with us.
Susan was a staffer?
Susan, no, at the federal, at the state level. Now, one issue, I don't want to get in the weeds with he said, she said on the issues here, but one thing that I want to tell you straight up how I see it that's coming down the pipe in this state and where I'm going to be on the issue is the Democrats in this state on transportation over the last decade have repeatedly made dumb transportation decisions, including they have spent all the money that you already pay at the gas tax and there's no money for maintenance. So the next time you go fill up your tank of gas, the Democrats and Christine Gregoire already spent your gas tax. Okay, so you're going to start seeing more potholes in your roads. I think it is inevitable that there is going to be a transportation package in this state, and because the King County folks want it to happen. There are more liberal King County politicians and moderate King County Republicans than there are the rest of us. So I'm telling you to your face that I am going to be involved in those transportation discussions because I am in the Senate where we're in the majority, and if that thing's going to go, I'm going to make bound and determined that we're going to get a north-south freeway out over it. So I'm not going to decide whether you get a gas tax. That's what's going to happen in Seattle. I am going to be involved in that if it's going forward, so you get protected, so you at least get something out of it. That means that if the gas tax is going to go, and they're decided to do it, and it gets us a north-south freeway, I will vote for that. Okay, so when I come back here, and if it happens, I don't want to come in front of you and say I'm trying to fool you in this front of a conservative group. Now, I think I'm an extremely conservative person. You can look at my voting record, what we're trying to do in the Senate, and I believe that's the most conservative thing to do. I may have a different view in the House if we were at 43 and not in position to make decisions, but that's where I'm coming from on the transportation thing. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's going to be my role on it if it does happen. Now, moving forward, I'll just close by saying this. It is unrealistic to think that it is going to be peace and harmony in our Republican Party, okay? We're humans. People want these jobs. People want to protect these jobs. By and large, your elected Republicans are doing a great job over there. I supported Jeff Baxter in his reelection. Mike Padden won. Mike Padden's one of my best allies, best friends in the Senate now, does a great job. I supported John Smith in his election, was an incumbent, and now Brian Dansel's in there. Brian Dansel's one of the most talented people we have in the Senate. Why I do that is because I'm not here for the people. I'm not here for the elected officials. I'm here for the ideas and for the people that we represent. Okay? This is not about me as elected official. This is about the ideas that I represent, and it's about you. So I would recommend that you try to depersonalize this as much as possible, concentrate on the ideas, and it is entirely appropriate to be mad, ticked off, angry, and vigorous about this issue. But please keep in mind, this is a far-left liberal state. The Seattleites, the socialists, are driving it farther left each and every day. And thank you for anybody that wants to be the part of the tip of the spear, and I count everybody in this room that wants to fight to stop that and try and push the ball in the other direction. Thanks so much. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Hey, we're wearing them out. This is
Got one here.
Michael, how do you feel the unions are going to, or how far do you feel the unions are going to go to defeat you in this particular race? And is it something we need to be real concerned about?
Yeah, very far. I'm one of the 4 targeted races among Republican incumbents. There's a far left California billionaire that wants to do cap and trade, named Steyer, that put over $500,000 into Jan Angel's race. And the national labor unions will be active in my race because I've been so visibly in the lead in making the state a right-to-work state. So we got our work cut out for us, to be sure.
Michael.
Mike, thank you for your service. Could I get you to clarify your position on Common Core?
Yeah, Common Core, I have a lot of skepticism about. I've consistently voted against Common Core when it's come up in the legislature. If I can break it down, if I can give you just a second, I like the idea of having standards, and I like the idea of having metrics, and I like the fact that in this state, against a WEA-dominated education system that wants nothing to move, that having standards and metrics aids reform. What I absolutely don't like about Common Core is the lack of local control, the federal government bureaucracy telling it what it's to do here, and the firmer progression of education away from family members and local communities. So I think if you look at what other states have done in Common Core, from Indiana had voted against it, but maybe they didn't, but other states, I think in this state that it's likely to be short-lived. But what you have to remember is ask yourself, why is the WEA fighting some of these reforms? Because of all the folks that we deal with in Olympia, the WEA Teachers Union is the single greatest impediment to actually moving the ball forward when it comes to education. Because education isn't just about putting more money into the system, it's about reforming the system, making sure that you have great teachers, getting parents involved, and getting back to the basics of education. So you do have to take, so I'm not a supporter of Common Core, but do take a look at the fact that why the WEA is opposed to it.
Senator, the state of California just ruled teacher protection for tenure is unconstitutional. What can you do with that in Washington State?
Well, it'd be interesting to see if someone filed the same lawsuit here. To repeat the question was, there was a big lawsuit today. Probably most of you are following the Cantor story. I think the biggest news of the day is the fact that a judge in California ruled that teacher tenure is unconstitutional and disenfranchises disadvantaged students. Now, both my parents were educators. My dad was a university professor, had tenure. Kind of makes sense at the university level if you're doing cutting edge stuff to be projected. My mother, 43 years a kindergarten teacher, great teacher, one of the best teachers in East Washington. There was no reason for her to have tenure. I mean, why should teaching 3 years in the K-12 system guarantee you a job for life? It should be based on merit. We should incentivize teachers and get teachers into the low-income areas and places where people are struggling. So I remember in one of my big debates versus Chris Marr, I said, no, I don't approve of teacher tenure, and the WEA representative almost threw a piece of paper at the host of the debate. You'll be surprised to note that I don't have the WEA endorsement. But in any event, hopefully a group like Freedom Foundation will take a look at that and see what can be done here.
Senator, you are one of 5 representatives in this area, yourself, Parker, Padden, Fagan, and Kretz, that sponsored a bill that I put forward with all 38 sheriffs of the state of Washington, saying that law enforcement officers should not commit crimes on duty, nor should they lie. Do you think that's going to have an effect on your race? Are you being targeted like they're targeting myself and some of us others?
Yeah, obviously, folks that aren't supportive of the idea. I mean, to me, it's just common sense if you're going to hold a police chief or a sheriff accountable for the performance of their duty, they have to have the right to be able to hire and fire people if they misbehave. And I think that's what the public wants. I think there's a real loss of public trust. Those folks that aren't in favor of that aren't in support of me being a co-sponsor on that piece of legislation. Let me just finish by saying this, because I know we're getting time is getting short, and you got a really great senator about to speak. So when there are divisions among people, at least when I was with the Iraqis and Afghans, I used to look at what could we unite around, and sometimes that was fighting Al-Qaeda, and sometimes fighting Josh Arritola or the Taliban. Here's an issue that everybody in this room should care about and everybody should work together, which is the biggest thing on the ballot this year is going to be these gun control initiatives. Okay, this is the biggest thing. There's no presidential election, there's no Senate election, no governor's election, but there are some very, very important gun control initiatives. And I've been so pleased that everybody that I've talked to from that has an R on their shirt has been interested in working on that issue. And I think it's something that all of you need to take an active role in as well too. So it's about the ideas, it's about the policies. It's not about me. It's about you and your kids. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now from the 7th District, we have Brian Dansel. And then I'll let you go home. Now, before Brian starts talking, we have straw poll forms, and I know a lot of you got them, but some haven't. And Roxanne has the extras, so hold your hand up and she'll see that you get them.
All righty. Well, I got to admit, Baumgartner said that we were going to go do karaoke, so that's why I'm dressed like this. I want to thank Grassroots Northwest. I was going to say that backwards. I said it backwards, so I got that right. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and supporting Republican candidates. I would echo what a lot of folks have said about trying to maintain within our own party so that we can have a better group and a good group in Olympia. I think one of the things that I'm going to try to do next year that we did this year is for the first time in 10 years, we were able to get out of session on time and on budget without raising taxes for in like nearly a decade. So I think that's worth repeating. I co-sponsored a bill that would require that the legislature do that every year or else strip them of their per diem pay. And as you can probably guess, that didn't come up for a vote. So I'm going to continue to push that. Probably my biggest victory, and the one that I'm going to try to continue to push, is in counties under 20,000 in population, we've given them the option to now opt out of the Growth Management Act. So what we're going to do with that is try to follow the model of the state of Florida, who got rid of their Smart Growth Initiative. It'll help the gentleman that was talking about his property on body of water. But it's something that needs to happen because we see left and right all the time that our property rights are dwindling, property values are going down, and you don't have the capability of being able to do things on your property that you should have. I support the idea of transferring the lands from federal to the state ownership and then doing pilot projects with counties involved, because the worst thing that we could possibly do is take back the federal lands and then put it in the hands of like the Department of Ecology. So we got to make sure that we do that right. So when we do that, I think the best way to do that is put locals in control. One of the other things that I think was really good is the carbon fuel initiative from Governor Inslee was a real thing, and so was the gas tax increase. We were able to beat those things. We need to continue to be able to beat those things as we move forward. It's really hard on small business. Representative Shea talked about the industrial hemp bill. That would be big in our northern counties, so I'll continue to work with him on that. I think Senator Baumgartner talked about education. Here's a real quick one. The other day I was on a panel in 9 Mile Falls, and the kids got it right, but I asked a question, are we a Republican form of government or a democracy? And the teacher got it wrong and the kids got it right. So you got to wonder about that. So that goes back to, I think that these people that are teaching our kids should probably know that. Then he also said at the beginning of the country in 1789 that the two parties that were in place were the Federalists and the Republicans. And the Republicans didn't come along until after the Whigs kind of got torn apart, and Abraham Lincoln was our first Republican president. So we kind of got a little bit of an issue of our kids knowing what's going on. So we've got to have some education reform, but also do what we can to support all sorts of education that does have incentive and does have measuring sticks. We've got 39 seconds left, and I can't go on anymore. I'm really looking for the karaoke.
You got any questions?
Senator, you've got some industries up in the 7th District that's been basically idle. Mining, timber, things to that effect. What are some of the things that you can do to free those industries up so they can get back up and running again?
You want to repeat the question? Okay, so the question was, we have iconic industries up in the 7th District like timber and mining. What can we do to be able to get those up and running again?
The first thing is the federal land management and how that's handled. Right now, we just had a gold mine in my hometown of Republic actually say that they were going to stop an EIS program that they were going with to try and explore for more gold. So the first thing you got to do is try to get some of that back into competent management. I don't know if you knew this, but the DNR, even as wasteful as they can be sometimes, are 1,200% more efficient on public lands for timber production than the National Forest Service. So that's pretty abysmal. We're not even doing a real good job on the state lands, but we got to do way better on the federal lands. And then also, when you look at the Growth Management Act, I'm excited about that because on private lands, development rights were being stolen for things like butterfly protection, the protection of bull trout, the protection of, my granddad gave me a piece of land that I couldn't build on because I said I had salmon habitat in a stream that was near my property. They're never going to salmon it. They said there's potential salmon habitat. How the hell does that work? That's how come I got involved in politics. This seems like the most nightmarish, out of control thing I've ever heard of in my entire life, and it is.
Called idiocracy.
And the best thing that I can tell you that I will do is self-impose term limits because it's needed. You got me for 8 years and then hang me, drag me out of there.
Okay, any other questions?
All right.
Okay, cool. Well, that is the end of our meeting. Thank you all for coming. And I hope you all learned something tonight. And I appreciate you guys ordering food because that helps with the expense here. And there are little donation buckets if any of you feel generous. And mingle around, ask people questions, and you won't be recorded or filmed. It's great.